I gotta start this video off with what may turn out to be one of the most sought after spells in the whole set, Rad Storm. As you may have expected from the name of the card, this does feature the ever-threatening Storm ability, copying the frightening single word, Proliferate. Blue is a color that can take advantage of this mechanic in so many ways, whether it be the new Rad counters, loyalty counters, +1/+1 counters, or the dreaded poison counters. What makes this so good in my book though, is that this can be cast at instant speed, letting you rely on your opponents to raise that storm count for you, to casually waltz in at the end to possibly put the game out of reach no matter what strategy you've built. Welcome back to the channel, everyone. This week I'm going over my favorite new spells from the Fallout set, whether for power or for flavor. Today we are taking a look at blue, and before the rest of the video, starting with Jason Bright, I must ask you to please subscribe to the channel. You'll get a main line to Commander content like this, and I'll get that external validation I desperately crave. Alright, let's talk about Jason Bright, Glowing Prophet, 2/3 zombie mutant that goes far beyond a stat line. He's got this killer ability that triggers whenever a zombie or mutant dies, letting you draw a card if its power was different from its base power. It's important to note that this doesn't trigger when one or more zombie dies, or only once per turn. It's a zombie for a card trade every single time. If you've got even a single Lord effect on the battlefield, any destructive board wipe that doesn't lead to your immediate demise won't hurt so bad, as you'll be sitting with all the cards you could ask for to rebuild your board state. And it's not like zombies are short on ways to change their power. Wilhelt has kinda cornered the market on zombies recently, but this ability reopens the door for a commander like Narfi, Betrayer King. The second ability has a bit more universal appeal, letting you sack a creature for 2 mana to give a creature a +1/+1 counter and flying for a turn. Speaking of commanders on the rise with this new printing, Grim Corpseborn has been known to get really big and sure would appreciate taking off. And then if he ends up getting destroyed, as he probably will, you at least get a card out of the deal. Nerd Rage is a literal photograph of me seconds after my commander got countered for the 3rd straight time. At the very worst, it's a permanent version of Divination, which isn't the most inspiring card and still sees some play. Goes to show you how much people like to draw cards. The difference is that this spell will stick around if you have Ascend spells, can feed into enchantment synergies, and has this major upside of removing your hand size limit and giving the enchanted creature +10/+10 if you attack with at least 10 cards in hand. This will be a nice inclusion in a deck like Alondra, which recently got reprinted in the Deep Clue C Precon. I've got a video reviewing that if you're interested in seeing what that deck is about. Struggle for Project Purity is the second and final version of this choose your own adventure type enchantments in the Fallout set. The first one being Battle of Hoover Dam, which we talked about yesterday. The first mode, Brotherhood, is aptly named and gets around some of the troubles a spell like Howling Mine gets you in. This makes each opponent draw a card on your upkeep, with you drawing a card to match the card drawn by each of your opponents. If you play this turn 4 and untap with all your opponents remaining, your beginning phase will net you 4 total cards, which is a lot of action. Where this really pops off is in conjunction with your drawn card payoffs. I know I just talked about Alondra, but before your main phase has even started, you're 1 card away from getting that 5th drawn card trigger. Min will pay off even when it's down to a one-on-one scenario. Teferi's Ageless Insight basically turns into a printer, and the list goes on and on. If you choose Enclave, you're opting for the more defensive of the two options, presenting your opponents with a choice. Leave you alone or attack, and for every creature they swung with, get double the rad counters. This is the first time we've seen rad counters on a card, so let's detour and see what they're about. They're about milling. If you've been infected with rad counters, at the beginning of your pre-combat main phase, you'll mill cards equal to the number of rad counters you have. For each non-land card milled this way, you'll lose 1 life and remove a rad counter. That means if you milled at least 1 land, at least 1 rad counter will stick around for you to repeat the process on your next turn. Enter Rad Storm again. Just kidding, not really. Back to the Enclave. If you choose this mode, you'll want to make sure you can take advantage of the rad counters in some way. Whether that's directly with a creature like Nightkin Ambusher, can make use of those creatures in the graveyard, or get payoffs as those cards get milled, like our next card. Mirelurk Queen, that enters the battlefield as a sad 5 mana 4/4, but has Vigilance and applies 2 rad counters to a target opponent. To maximize this creature, you'll want to have radiated all or most of your opponents, because once per turn when a non-land card is milled, not only do they lose that point of life from the rad counter, the Queen will draw you a card and gain a +1/+1 counter. Even if you've just got those 2 rad counters, you're closing in on a 90% chance for at least 1 card and 1 counter. I gotta point out, this ability doesn't apply to only rad counters or only trigger for your opponents. You can trigger this yourself and is sure to feel good in decks that plan on doing a lot of milling. Let's wrap this video up with Synth Infiltrator, which has an effect we've seen before, able to become a copy of a creature on the battlefield. As you can see here, the going rate for this kind of effect is 4 mana. So when I look at this creature and see that keyword improvise, meaning artifacts you control can tap to pay a colorless mana, what I'm really seeing is a 2 mana copy a creature spell, and that is something to get excited about. This is a banger in targeted artifact decks, where you can copy anything on your board, from card draw to cost reduction to finishers. And that isn't even considering all the fun stuff your opponents are playing with. I'll leave it here. Thanks so much for watching. Coming out tomorrow are the black spells, so hit that subscribe button so you can see that as soon as it comes out. Like the video if you liked the video, and let me know in the comments your biggest nerd rage moment. I'll catch you next time for some more monkeying around.